Okay, we are in the kitchen today and it is a crazy mess because I am pickling some eggs and I just wanted to show you guys how I do this. It's really easy. First thing you do is hard boil your eggs, although I steam mine. I find it easier to peel them even when they're fresh. If you steam the eggs, I'll show you how I do that. And then make up the brine mixture, and then I let that cool, and then while the eggs are boiling and the brine is cooling, I start chopping up all my ingredients. I've got jalapenos, onions, some garlic I need to chop up, and some dill, and then I have whatever spices I feel like throwing in there. It's really easy. Dan likes to eat these, his buddies like to eat these when they come over, and it's just a good way for us to use up the abundance of eggs that we get, especially this time of year, from all of the chicken. Take the lid off so I could show you. But so to steam the eggs, you just line the bottom of the pan with the eggs and then do not cover them with water. You do, like, there's honestly probably a little more water in here than I needed, but about halfway to 3/4 up the sides of the eggs, and then put a lid on, cook them for 10-12 minutes like that, and then, you know, once it's boiling, and then I always like to throw them in the sink. I'm super lazy, so I don't even do a cold water or ice bath. I just put them in the sink until everybody's done, and then I run cold water over them, you know, as I am cracking and peeling them, so that I'm not burning my hands if they're still a little warm. But these are all fresh eggs. Pretty easy to do. Here is the brine mixture. It doesn't look like anything. It's 50-50 water, vinegar, and then a teaspoon of salt for every 2 cups of vinegar. So if I do 2 cups of vinegar, 2 cups of water, it'd be 2 teaspoons of salt. I have seen people do up to like a tablespoon of salt per the 2 cups, but this is just what we like it at. Definitely play around with it and see what you like. But yeah, I just heat this up enough basically to dissolve the salt, and then I shut it off and let it cool. So I'm just going to show you for peeling the eggs. This is a fresh egg. It's just steamed. Just kind of go all the way around. And I don't really get the issues with losing chunks of the egg white when they're steamed, even when they're fresh. If I can, there we go. Usually it'll come off in big chunks, and I don't know if the steam is showing up on this, but this egg is still pretty hot. So I don't really think an ice bath is necessary. Steaming is just the superior way. So for loading it in the jars, just kind of depends on whatever, that's not on the inside, I promise. Whatever size jar you want, you're going to kind of layer the jar with your different eggs and spices. You could just do the brine mixture. You don't need to do anything else really, but we like to add in extra spices and herbs and such. So I'm going to do eggs, dill, jalapenos, onion, sprinkling in of my different seasonings. I'm going to try pickling spice. I actually haven't tried that yet, but I had some on hand because I made pickled fish and would like to try it. Sometimes I like to add a little turmeric, more for color than anything else. Cumin, red pepper. The boys like it spicy, so I try to make it as spicy as possible. I've even done, if I have dehydrated jalapenos, I will put those in here. Just keep in mind they're going to obviously rehydrate and take up space. The biggest thing when you are filling your jar is to not completely stuff it full of eggs and all your other ingredients. You want everything to be able to float and move around a little bit. Here, there we go. Because throughout about 2 weeks before you want to eat them, a week at least, but up to 2 weeks is good. You're going to want to flip it upside down the jar every day just to make sure all the ingredients are moving around, all the eggs are getting all of the goodness on them. So if you have it completely packed tight, you're not going to be able, like, they're not going to rotate, and I just find they do not pickle as well if you have packed it that tight. So honestly, less is more when you're filling your jar with the solid ingredients. All right, I have several eggs peeled, so I am going to go ahead and start filling this jar. I just wanted to show you, when you're peeling your eggs, if you happen to get too rough and accidentally have any crack open to where you can see the yolk. This is not a good egg to use in this because the yolk will disintegrate and get mixed in with all the liquid, and it will just look cloudy and disgusting in there. So save this one for deviled eggs or just a hard-boiled egg to eat. You don't want it in here. So first I'm going to put in a little bit of dill, which I need more dill. I'm running out. But we like, well, the boys like the dill in it. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of pickled eggs. The texture is just not for me. So a little bit of dill, a couple eggs. I'm not going to go too spicy on this one because this batch is for our neighbor and he wasn't a huge fan of the spiciness. So less spice in this one. Onion, some of the garlic, some of the jalapenos. You want the seeds and the stems, all of it is good. Guess these are jalapenos. If you didn't know, jalapenos turn red after they have been growing for so long if you leave them on the stem. And I like the red ones because I think they look cool, so I let that happen. As you can see, I'm just gonna layer everything in here. There's not really any particular way to do this. You know, add in whatever spices you like. If you have different spices that you use, I would love to hear what you put in these because I'm always trying to keep it interesting. Some fresh ground black pepper. He didn't want his super spicy, so I'm going to keep out the cumin. We like red pepper flakes, so who doesn't like red pepper? And that's about as full as I'm going to take it with the eggs because, as I said, you want it to be able to, let's see, one more will work. You want it to be able to float around a bit, and if you completely jam pack it, that's not going to work. Now I'm just going to top it off with my brine mixture. The brine is still a little bit warm, but I'm not worried about that. The eggs are a little bit warm too yet. Oop. I'm making a mess. Now for storage, spilling everywhere. I will just put this in the fridge. Like I said, you're going to want to kind of tip it upside down once a day, stir it around just to make sure everything else that you added in there is getting mixed around. If you didn't add anything else in there, probably not necessary, but you want to do that for about a week before you start eating them, just to make sure they really get pickled, because it takes a little bit for the eggs to absorb everything. And then, I mean, even up to 2 weeks, it just kind of depends on how big of a batch you're doing. For like our gallon jar, probably a little bit longer. And for how long they're good, you want to keep it in the fridge, obviously, and then how long they're good for in the fridge once they've been pickled, that's debatable. I've seen people say just a month or two. We've left some in there when I've made a lot, like up to 6 months, and they're still good. Nobody's died from eating them. I'd say that's up to personal discretion. I will say the longer you leave them in the fridge, the more rubbery texture they will get just from the pickling process. So again, up to you, but that's how we make pickled eggs. It's super easy. Just top it off and put my lid on, and then I'll shake it a couple times to make sure everything is mixed around in there. Obviously, if you're putting a lot of powdered stuff like the cumin and turmeric in here, it will get a little bit cloudy looking as it sits, just because that is a powder. But this will be a pretty clean jar because I didn't add any of that powdery stuff. The little pepper flakes will end up staining the eggs, and I could have done more dill, but I am running out of dill. I might end up squeezing some in the top here once I get my other jars filled. Now, if you are looking for the written version of this recipe, I actually have it in my book, Getting Started with Chickens, if you can see that. There are a few other recipes for preserving and using up eggs. I might end up throwing this recipe up on my website just so people can find it. But yeah, just wanted to mention it's in my book. If you want to grab the book, that'd be awesome. It's also available on Kindle.